Fox News alert, President Trump again threatening to shut down the border, tweeting, Mexico is doing nothing to help stop the flow of illegal immigrants into our country. They are all talk and no action. Likewise, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador have taken our money for years and do nothing. The Dems don't care. Such bad laws may close the southern border, exclamation point. All this as DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen has announced the signing of a historic regional compact with Central American countries aimed at stemming migration at its source. The president is warning. His warning, comes as the nation's top border official says the migrant crisis has reached a breaking point and that there needs to be a legislative fix to stem the tide.
On Monday and Tuesday, CBP started the day with over 12,000 migrants in our custody. As of this morning, that number was 13,400. A high number for us is 4,000. A crisis level is 6,000. Legislative relief, changes in the law, and closing the vulnerabilities in our legal framework is the only way that this flow is going to be reduced.
Underscoring the crisis, a reporter for the Washington Post tweeted photographs of what he says are migrants detained under a bridge in El Paso, Texas, because Border Patrol apparently has nowhere else to house them. Katie, I'm going to come to you on this. You and I have lived in a border state. We have seen this go back and forth for years. Your take on where we are now?
It's just incredibly frustrating to watch Congress not deal with this issue. We can talk about comprehensive immigration reform, we can talk about all this stuff, and it doesn't address the issue. You can see the photos here. This is absolutely a humanitarian crisis. When you talk to the Border Patrol agents on the ground there, they're doing the best that they can to deal with the humanitarian side of this by taking care of children and sick parents, and there's nowhere else to put them. And instead of changing the law, which would stop this at its source with the asylum claims and with being able to deport Central Americans right away, they're saying that they're going to put them under a bridge like this. This is not humane, but this is the only choice that they have. And they also want to build new facilities. So instead of stopping it, they're just expanding it. Meanwhile, all of these people are going to be in line for years to get processed through the immigration court system. And in that time, they will disappear into the country, and they won't be able to be found ever again. The numbers that we're seeing now are going to total up to 1 million by the end of the year, filling stadiums and stadiums full of people. And it's unfair to put Border Patrol and ICE agents into this position because they're being accused of being inhumane when Congress isn't changing the laws that allow them to do their jobs.
You know, Marie, and you couple all of that with a couple of other facts. The Border Patrol has a hiring and retention an incredible problem right now. We're seeing a couple of members of Congress, Crenshaw and McSally, senator and representative, work together on trying to get legislation to help the Border Patrol hire fast. They've got north of 2,000 positions. And you couple that with the number of people coming over now that are unaccompanied minors. And what our reporter William Lajeunesse called a conveyor belt yesterday, where these children are brought with these bad guys.
They're not their parents.
Not their parents. They're seeing that. And then they're returned to their countries and used again to come north.
I think trying to tackle the problem at the root in the countries where they first leave from is really important. That's something each administration has tried to do, and seeing that Secretary Nielsen was trying to work on that, I think, is a really important piece of it. It's easier to try and stop it at the source than to deal with it when they get here. I also think those photos that Washington Post, I think, reporter tweeted out, those were shocking and heartbreaking. And I think one thing it said to me, on a humanitarian level, like you said, Katie, one thing that says to me is the Trump administration's zero tolerance, or whatever you want to call the policy, has not served as a deterrent. Because more people are coming, because, you know, Jeff Sessions used to say, and John Kelly used to say, Kirstjen Nielsen has said, our language and our policies are supposed to, in part, serve as a deterrent, and we see that that's not happening. So Congress, Katie is right, Congress needs to do something, and I am like at a 0% chance that they will.
Congress seems to be politically constipated on this.
They have been for decades.
They say they have ideas, but we don't see them, David.
You know what? I find it interesting because Marie does this clever Democrat pivot that immediately it has to go to Trump and whatever. I lived in Texas.
He's the president.
I went to the border in the
policy,
90s.
David.
I watched this. The policy issue here is not either you stop it in the country of origin or at the border. It's that you must do both. The problem is working with these countries, and I've just had several long conversations with a Colombian senator about the problems in her country and the people that are passing through to come here. They're not stopping it there. So we have to close the border, stop the problem, send that back so the children that are being used as tools for human trafficking are not reused and re-abused. You can't just do one or the other, and it's a fantasy to believe that Guatemala, El Salvador, Colombia, those leaving Venezuela, over 1.3 million who've crossed into Colombia, all of them are suddenly going to stay there. And in this latest caravan, there are 700 reported Cubans, about that many, leaving Mexico because Mexico doesn't deport all the Cubans that go to Mexico. They're now making our way to our border.
The most compelling thing that I heard from Kevin McElhaney, was that his name, from Border Patrol, when he was saying that they expect 40,000 kids to come over the border and be intercepted or encountered this month. That is the largest number ever. And he said that he is afraid something horrible is going to happen to one or more of those children.
Well, we've lost three already.
And that is going to, that tragedy will focus the nation's attention.
Well, when their youth runs out.
We don't want to see that happen. But that, if nothing else, that possibility and that humanitarian crisis should focus everyone away from the politics of this and on some sort of solution.
Can I just say one more thing about the kids and the 40,000 who come here? So if you come here as an unaccompanied minor, you now are put with a sponsor. And the last bill that President Trump signed with the national emergency allows for amnesty for anybody who says they will be a sponsor. They don't have to be their parents or a family member. And there was a whistleblower named Jason Piccolo, who I interviewed a couple of months ago, who worked for the Obama administration in 2014 and blew the whistle about these kids being placed with sex traffickers in the United States who were saying that they were sponsors. And because there's such a backlog with the 40,000 kids, they don't have the proper time to do the vetting on the adults that they're sending them to. So the abuse continues once they are inside the country. And yet all of the focus has been about ripping, children away from their parents, when Border Patrol is trying to make sure that these kids are not being placed in a trafficked in an abusive situation, which ends up being the situation most of the time.
Well, and it comes back to what I was saying to Marie about the hiring, about getting enough eyes on the situation. I mean, when you have any agency that has that many openings and they're tasked with doing this sort of thing, it is a recipe. It is toxic. It is a recipe for disaster.
And morale.
Let's pray that it doesn't continue. Yeah.